The small workshop stood at the edge of a dusty outpost where human traders and alien travelers passed every day. The workshop looked old and simple. Its walls were made from metal sheets and the paint had faded a long time ago. But inside this humble place lived a human mechanic named Sam. Sam was not rich. He wore the same brown jacket almost every day, and his shoes were full of small scratches from years of work. His hands were always stained with oil, but his heart was kind. He had learned to fix everything from old shuttle engines to farming machines. He never asked people for too much money. If someone was poor, he still helped. That was just the kind of person Sam was. Most evenings, after the sun dipped behind the hills, the outpost became quiet. Only the wind and the sound of metal creaking filled the air. Sam usually sat outside on a wooden chair with a cup of warm tea in his hand. He liked watching the stars appear one by one in the wide sky. He often imagined what it would be like to travel out there, far beyond the dusty road where he lived. But dreams like that felt too big for someone like him. On one of those quiet evenings, something unusual happened. Sam heard a soft sound outside his workshop. At first, he thought it was the wind blowing through the scrap piles. But then he heard it again, a soft, shaky sound. It was the sound of someone crying. Sam slowly stood up from his chair and walked toward the noise. He looked around carefully. The light from the workshop door was weak, but it was enough to see a small figure sitting near the gate. As he stepped closer, he saw her clearly, a little alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, and she had bright silver eyes that reflected the workshop light. She looked frightened and weak. Her legs were not like human legs. They were made from a mix of delicate metal and soft biological material, something Sam had never seen up close before. One of them was broken. The metal frame was bent and wires hung loose. The girl held her legs tightly, crying quietly into the dark. Sam's heart softened the moment he saw her. He could tell she had been through something difficult. Without thinking twice, he gently knelt down in front of her. Hey, it's okay," he said softly, not sure if she understood his language. The girl lifted her head. Her big eyes were full of fear and pain. She didn't speak, only watched him carefully as if trying to decide if he was safe. Sam slowly reached out his hand but didn't touch her. He wanted to show her that he was not going to hurt her. After a few seconds, she slowly let go of her legs. That was enough for him. "Come inside," Sam said gently. "You're safe here." She didn't understand the words, but maybe she understood his voice. She slowly nodded. Sam carefully helped her stand up. She was light and fragile, and he supported her broken legs as they moved toward the workshop. Inside, the workshop was warm. It smelled like machine oil and metal, but compared to the cold outside, it felt safe. Sam placed her gently on a chair near his workbench. She looked around, still scared, but not as much as before. Sam quickly brought her a cup of warm water. She held it with both hands and drank slowly. He noticed her fingers were small and delicate, almost glowing under the workshop light. As she drank, Sam quietly looked at her broken legs. The damage was serious. The metal joints were cracked, and some small lights inside the structure were flickering weakly. He had never repaired alien prosthetics like this before. The technology was far more advanced than anything he usually worked on. But seeing her helpless face, Sam didn't care how difficult it was going to be. He gently pointed at her legs to ask if it hurt. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears again. Sam grabbed a clean piece of cloth and wrapped it around the damaged part to stop it from getting worse. Then he covered her with a warm blanket. "Don't worry," he whispered softly. "I'll fix it." She didn't know what those words meant. But when she looked at him, something in her expression changed. For the first time since he found her, her face didn't look full of fear. She looked at him with quiet trust. Sam worked late that night. He didn't have the right parts or the right tools, but he carefully examined the structure of her legs, taking notes in a small old notebook. The girl sat quietly nearby, wrapped in the blanket, watching him with wide eyes. At one point, Sam gave her a small metal wrench to hold. She turned it over in her hands, curious. When she looked up at him again, she had a tiny smile on her face. That simple smile made Sam feel something warm in his chest. It reminded him why he loved helping people, even when life wasn't easy for him. Outside, the desert wind blew harder, but inside the workshop, it was calm. Sam gave her a soft pillow and made her a small bed on a wooden cot beside the workbench. She lay down slowly, still holding the wrench like it was a treasure. As she closed her eyes, Sam sat at his workbench and sighed quietly. He didn't know who she was or where she came from. He didn't even know her name. But he knew one thing for sure: he was not going to let her suffer alone. He looked at her sleeping peacefully. "We'll get those legs fixed," he whispered to himself. "I promise." He then looked at the starry night sky through the small window. He had no idea that this small act of kindness would change his life forever. He didn't know that the little girl sleeping in his workshop wasn't just any alien child. Somewhere far above the sky, powerful people were searching for her. But for now, she was just a scared little girl, and he was just a poor mechanic who decided to help. Sam leaned back in his chair, feeling tired but calm. The sound of the wind outside mixed with the soft sound of her breathing. It felt like the beginning of something bigger than either of them could understand. And in that quiet night, a bond was formed between a human who fixed broken things and a little alien girl whose broken legs would lead them both into a story they would never forget. The next morning, warm sunlight slipped through the small windows of the workshop. The outpost slowly came to life with the sound of people opening shops, small shuttles landing, and the low hum of machines starting their day. But inside Sam's workshop, it was quiet and calm. The little alien girl was still sleeping on the wooden cot near the workbench, holding the small wrench in her hand like it was her favorite toy. Sam stood nearby, sipping his tea and watching her with a thoughtful look. She looked peaceful, not like the frightened child he found outside last night. Her soft breathing and relaxed face reminded him why he had brought her in. He didn't know her story, but he could see the pain in her broken legs. When she finally opened her eyes, she blinked at the sunlight and looked around, a little confused at first. But then she saw Sam and relaxed again. Sam smiled at her gently. "Good morning," he said softly, even though he knew she didn't understand. She slowly sat up, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Sam brought her a cup of warm water and a piece of soft bread. She accepted it with both hands. She didn't speak his language, but her eyes were full of thanks. After she ate, Sam gently pointed to her legs. She looked down at them and then back at him, worry crossing her face. Sam nodded to reassure her. "I'll fix it," he repeated softly. He didn't need her to understand every word. His calm tone was enough. Sam moved to his workbench and began laying out tools: wrenches, screwdrivers, old wires, and pieces of metal. He had spent half the night sketching a plan for new legs. He didn't have advanced alien tools, but he had a creative mind and a lot of determination. He walked to the corner of the workshop where he kept piles of old scrap parts. Most people threw these away, but Sam always kept them, saying, "Everything broken can be made useful again." He carefully picked out light but strong metal plates, flexible wiring, and a few rare pieces he had saved for years. The little girl watched him quietly from the cot. She tilted her head as if trying to understand what he was doing. Sam liked her curious eyes. He decided to show her step by step so she wouldn't be afraid. He took one of the metal plates, held it up, and then mimed walking with his hands. She let out a small laugh, her first sound that wasn't crying. Sam smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "This is for your legs." He placed the parts on the workbench and started shaping them carefully. His hands moved with skill, smoothing rough edges, bending the plates gently and connecting wires like a puzzle. It wasn't easy. This wasn't like fixing an old shuttle. The alien technology was different, more delicate, more advanced. But Sam had fixed many strange things in his life. He believed everything had a way to work again if someone cared enough to try. Hours passed slowly. The sound of tools filled the workshop, clicking, tapping, buzzing. The girl watched him, sometimes leaning forward as if she wanted to help. When she picked up a small bolt and handed it to him, Sam was surprised but happy. She didn't speak, but she understood his work in her own way. He pointed at himself and said, "Sam." She blinked. He repeated gently, "Sam." After a moment, she pointed at him with her tiny blue finger and said softly, "Sam." He laughed quietly. "Yes, Sam." Then he pointed at her. She tilted her head, hesitating, then softly said, "Lyra." Sam nodded. "Lyra," he repeated. She smiled shyly. That was the first time he learned her name. Lyra. From that moment, the workshop didn't feel as quiet anymore. Lyra followed him with her eyes as he worked. Sometimes she asked questions in her own language. Soft sounds that Sam didn't understand, but he answered anyway with simple words and gestures. Their worlds were different, but their bond was growing every hour. That evening, Sam realized something important. He didn't have the special energy cores needed to power the advanced prosthetic parts. Without them, the legs wouldn't move properly. He checked all his shelves twice, but there was nothing close to what he needed. He sat down at his workbench, feeling tired. Lyra noticed the change in his face. She slowly got up from the cot, balancing on her damaged legs, and limped toward him. Her steps were shaky. She placed her small hand on his arm, looking at him with gentle eyes as if telling him, "Don't give up." Sam smiled weakly. "Yeah," he whispered, "I won't." He knew where he might find what he needed. At the edge of town was an old junkyard where crashed ships were stored. Many broken machines ended up there. If he was lucky, he might find the parts he needed. The next morning, Sam wrapped Lyra in a soft blanket and placed her gently in a small hover cart. He didn't want to leave her alone in the workshop. He pulled the cart through the dusty streets toward the junkyard. People in the outpost stared at them. A human mechanic and a strange little alien girl. Some whispered quietly, but Sam didn't care. When they reached the junkyard, Sam climbed over piles of scrap metal, broken engines, and old ship parts. He looked carefully through each pile, searching for a small, glowing energy core, something still alive and usable. Lyra sat in the cart, watching him eagerly, sometimes pointing when she saw something shiny. After hours of searching, Sam found it, a small silver cylinder, cracked but still glowing faintly. He lifted it up with a tired but excited grin. "This will work," he said. Lyra didn't understand his words, but when she saw the spark in his eyes, she clapped her hands softly. They returned to the workshop, tired but happy. Sam placed the glowing core on the workbench and carefully connected it to the parts he had prepared. It fit perfectly. Lyra sat nearby, her silver eyes wide with hope. Over the next few nights, Sam worked harder than he ever had before. He polished every joint, tested every wire, and shaped every piece with care. Lyra helped in small ways, handing him tools, holding small lights, or just sitting close to remind him why he was doing all this. One night, while the desert wind blew softly outside, Sam made her a promise. He sat next to her cot, looked her in the eyes, and said gently, "Lyra, I'll make you walk again." She didn't understand the full sentence, but she felt it. Her small hand reached out and held his for a moment. That simple touch said everything. As Sam returned to his workbench, he didn't feel poor anymore. He didn't feel alone. Something bigger was happening in his small workshop, something kind and powerful. He had no idea that beyond the stars, a royal ship was still searching for Lyra. But right here, in this dusty corner of the universe, a simple mechanic and a little alien girl had found a connection that no money could buy. The days passed slowly but steadily in Sam's small workshop. The sound of tools and soft alien whispers had become part of everyday life. Lyra was no longer the frightened child Sam had found crying in the dust. She had begun to smile more, laugh softly when Sam made mistakes with his tools, and even try to help him in her own little ways. Sam, though tired, felt a warmth in his heart every time he saw her face light up. The new legs were almost ready. The frame was strong, the wires were smooth, and the glowing energy core they had found at the junkyard fit perfectly. All that was left was the final fitting, the most delicate and difficult part of the job. But just when everything seemed to be going well, trouble arrived. That afternoon, Sam stepped outside to fetch a box of spare bolts from the storage shed behind the workshop. The wind was quiet, the streets of the outpost calm, but as he turned back toward the shop, he noticed something unusual. 3 tall men wearing dusty jackets stood near the door looking inside. They were strangers, not locals. Sam's heart tensed. He slowly walked closer. "Can I help you?" he asked in a calm but firm voice. One of the men, with a long scar across his cheek, gave a sharp smile. "We heard you've got something interesting in there." Sam felt a cold wave in his chest. "This is a repair shop. I fix machines," he answered. The man took a slow step forward. Not a machine, a girl. A little alien girl. A very valuable little alien girl. Behind the man, another stepped forward, holding a small scanner. Sam realized then that they weren't just passing travelers. These were traders, the kind who made money by finding and selling information, or worse, people. Someone must have seen Lyra when Sam took her to the junkyard. "She's not yours," Sam said quietly, standing in front of the door. She's not yours either. The man with the scar replied coldly, but she's worth a fortune. Her kind doesn't end up in places like this. Somebody up there is looking for her, and if we hand her over, we get paid. Big money. Sam clenched his fists. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have guards. All he had was his workshop, his tools, and his promise to Lyra. Leave, Sam said simply. The men laughed. Do you even know what she is? One of them said. She's not some lost child. She's high value. We're being nice right now, mechanic. Don't make it hard. Behind the door, Lyra was peeking out, her wide silver eyes filled with fear. She understood nothing of their language, but she could feel the danger in their voices. Sam gently motioned for her to step back. Then he took a firm breath and said, She's not going anywhere with you. For a moment, the air went silent. The man with the scar narrowed his eyes. Fine, he said slowly, but you'll regret it. They turned and walked away, but Sam knew it wasn't over. People like them never gave up that easily. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. He sat at his workbench with his head down, listening to the soft breathing of Lyra, who had fallen asleep holding the same wrench she loved. The workshop lights were dim and the wind outside carried an uneasy feeling. He knew they would come back. He also knew he couldn't protect her with strength. He didn't have much. But he could use what he did have, his mind, his hands, and his heart. The next day, he began to work faster. He reinforced the workshop door with steel beams and secured the windows with old shuttle panels. He checked the wiring on Lyra's new legs again and again. He needed them to be perfect because soon she might need them not just to walk, but to run. As he worked, Lyra noticed his worried face. She walked to him, balancing on her broken legs with difficulty. She tugged at his sleeve gently. Sam forced a smile, not wanting to scare her. It's okay, Lyra, he said softly. I'll keep you safe. Even though she didn't understand his words, she nodded. She trusted him completely. That afternoon, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds covered the sky and sand swirled around the outpost. The air was thick and heavy. Sam worked through the howling wind, tightening bolts on the prosthetic legs. His hands moved quickly, his heart pounding. Suddenly, he heard a noise, a loud metallic thud at the back of the workshop. He froze. It wasn't the wind. He rushed to the back door and saw shadows moving. The three men had returned, and this time they weren't knocking. They were trying to break in. Sam ran to Lyra. Hide, he whispered firmly, pointing to the storage space beneath the workbench. Lyra's silver eyes widened, but she didn't hesitate. She climbed into the space and pulled the small curtain closed. Sam grabbed the nearest thing he could, a long metal rod, and stood near the entrance. The door shook as the men pushed against it. Open up, mechanic, the scarred man shouted from outside. We tried to be polite. The old door cracked under their force. Sam's heart raced. He wasn't a fighter, but he also wasn't a coward. The door burst open with a loud crash. Dust flew through the air as the three men stepped inside, their boots heavy on the floor. One of them carried a blaster, not pointed yet, but close enough to scare. Move aside, the scarred man ordered. Sam stood his ground. She's not here, he said quickly. The man smiled darkly. Oh, she's here. We'll find her. And when we do, you'll wish you hadn't tried to be a hero. They started searching the workshop, kicking aside boxes, throwing tools on the floor. Sam tried to block their way, but one of them shoved him aside roughly. He fell against a shelf but quickly got back up. Just when the scarred man reached near the workbench, the lights flickered. A sharp electrical sound filled the room. Sam had connected an old emergency power coil to a small defense circuit and something he built years ago to keep thieves away from his tools. The scarred man grabbed the metal handle of a shelf and yelped in surprise as a small electric spark shocked his hand. It wasn't strong enough to hurt badly, but it was enough to make him step back fast. Sam used that moment to push the shelf down. It crashed to the floor with a loud bang, blocking the way to Lyra's hiding spot. Get him, one of the men shouted. Sam dodged as the second man swung at him. He wasn't fast, but he knew his workshop better than anyone. He grabbed a wrench and threw it at a switch on the wall. A blast of compressed air shot out from a broken engine part, knocking the man off balance. Crazy mechanic, the scarred man shouted angrily. The fight wasn't about strength. It was about time. Sam needed to keep them away from Lyra until someone heard the noise or until they gave up, but he didn't know how long he could hold out. Just then, the sound of distant sirens filled the air. The outpost patrol. The commotion had drawn attention. The three men exchanged tense looks. "This isn't over," the scarred man growled, pointing at Sam before they rushed out through the storm. When the workshop finally became quiet again, Sam rushed to the workbench and lifted the curtain. Lyra was still hiding, holding the small wrench tightly in both hands. "It's okay," Sam whispered, kneeling down. "They're gone." Lyra crawled out slowly. Her small hands trembled, but she threw her arms around Sam's neck, hugging him tightly. Sam felt his chest ache with a mix of relief and fear. He gently held her back. That night, Sam sat beside her cot as she finally fell asleep again. He stared at the half-finished legs on his workbench. He knew now more than ever that finishing them was not just important. It was necessary. He whispered to the quiet room, "I'll protect you, Lyra, no matter what." Outside, the storm slowly calmed, but Sam knew danger still lingered in the shadows. And somewhere far beyond the stars, the people searching for Lyra were getting closer. The next morning, the air around the outpost was still and quiet. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the ground covered in fine golden dust. Sam stood outside his workshop for a few minutes, looking down the empty road. His heart was still beating fast from everything that had happened the night before. He knew the men who tried to take Lyra would not give up. He stepped back inside, locking the door carefully. Lyra was sitting on the cot, hugging the blanket around her small shoulders. Her silver eyes followed every move Sam made. She wasn't crying, but there was fear in her eyes. Sam knelt down beside her and spoke softly, even though she couldn't understand all the words. "It's going to be okay," he said. "I promise. I'll finish your legs. You'll walk. And no one will ever take you away." She tilted her head, studying his face. Then slowly she reached out and touched his hand. That simple gesture gave him strength. Sam stood up and walked to the workbench. The half-finished legs were waiting. He looked at them with determination. There was no more time to waste. If he wanted to keep Lyra safe, she needed to walk again, soon. He pulled out his tools and started working faster than he ever had before. He tightened the joints, adjusted the wires, and carefully placed the glowing energy core inside the main frame. His hands moved with skill and focus. Each click of the wrench echoed through the quiet workshop. Lyra watched silently, sometimes handing him small pieces when he pointed to them. She had learned how to help in her own way. Hours passed. The sun climbed high in the sky, then began to fall again. Sam forgot to eat, forgot to rest. All he could think about was finishing the legs before anything else happened. As the evening light turned orange, Sam wiped the sweat from his forehead. He picked up the legs gently and tested the movement. The small mechanical joints bent smoothly, and the energy core gave a soft blue glow. It worked. For the first time in many days, he allowed himself to smile. "Lyra," he called softly. She looked up. Sam knelt in front of her and placed the new legs carefully on the floor beside her cot. Lyra's eyes grew wide. She touched the smooth metal with her small blue fingers. Her breathing quickened, but not with fear, this time with hope. "Are you ready?" Sam asked gently. She didn't understand the words, but she nodded anyway. Sam worked slowly and carefully. He removed the broken parts from her damaged legs, his hands steady but his heart pounding. Lyra didn't cry. She trusted him completely. He attached the new prosthetic parts with care, connecting each wire, securing each joint, checking every light. When he was done, he stepped back and exhaled deeply. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's try." Lyra placed her hands on the sides of the cot and slowly pushed herself up. Her body trembled. The new legs held her weight for the first time. Sam stood close, ready to catch her if she fell. At first, she wobbled like a baby learning to walk. Her steps were small and shaky, but the legs worked. The soft whirring sound of the joints filled the room. She took one step, then another. Sam's chest tightened as he watched her face slowly light up with a smile. A bright, joyful smile. It was the first time he had seen her truly happy. "You're walking," Sam said softly. "You did it," Lyra laughed, a sound soft and clear like music. She raised her arms like a bird testing its wings and walked toward the door with growing confidence. Sam followed close behind, his heart full. She opened the workshop door and stepped outside into the golden light. For the first time since Sam had found her, Lyra stood on her own 2 feet under the open sky. The wind brushed against her hair. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting it touch her face. Sam watched her silently. He felt something warm and deep inside. Pride, joy, and something even stronger. It wasn't just about fixing legs anymore. He had given her back a piece of her life, but the peaceful moment didn't last long. From far away, a sound broke the quiet air, a sharp humming noise like engines approaching. Sam's smile faded. He looked up and saw small lights in the distant sky. They were moving fast. His heart tightened. Those weren't small trade ships. They looked like patrol vessels or something even more powerful. "Lyra," he called quickly. She turned around, confused. Sam ran to her and gently guided her back inside. He shut the door and checked through the small window. The ships were getting closer. He didn't know who they belonged to, but his gut told him this was connected to Lyra. He quickly packed a small bag with some tools and energy cells. If danger came, they might need to leave fast. Lyra didn't fully understand what was happening, but when she saw the worry on his face, she nodded quietly and followed his lead. Within minutes, the ships hovered over the outpost. The sound shook the ground. People came out of their homes to look up at the sky. A soft voice echoed through loudspeakers in a language Sam didn't understand. But the tone was calm, not like the men who tried to take her. A moment later, there was a knock on the workshop door, not loud, not threatening. Sam hesitated, holding his breath. He opened the door slowly. Standing outside were two tall alien guards in elegant silver armor. Behind them stood a woman unlike anyone Sam had ever seen. She had the same pale blue skin and silver eyes as Lyra. Her posture was strong. Her clothes were royal and shining softly in the sunlight. The moment Lyra saw her, her eyes filled with tears, not of fear but of recognition. She whispered a soft word. "Mother." Lyra ran forward on her new legs. She stumbled a little at first, but then ran faster, her steps strong and sure. The royal woman fell to her knees and opened her arms wide. Lyra jumped into them, holding her tightly. Sam stood in the doorway, frozen. The woman held her daughter close, whispering soft words in their language. Then she looked up at Sam. Her eyes weren't cold or distant. They were warm and full of gratitude. One of the guards stepped forward and spoke through a translator. "This is Queen Sarai. You saved her daughter." Sam blinked. "Queen?" "Yes," the guard replied. "She is the ruler of the Zevran Empire. Her daughter was lost in a shuttle accident weeks ago. We have searched every system." "You gave her hope." Sam looked at Lyra and the Queen still hugging each other tightly. He finally understood why the traitors had been after her. She wasn't just a lost child, she was royal. The Queen stood slowly, holding Lyra's hand. She walked toward Sam and bowed her head slightly, a sign of respect in her culture. The translator spoke again. "The Queen thanks you. She says no words are enough for what you have done." Sam felt awkward and humble. "I just helped her," he said softly. "She says you gave her daughter back her legs," the translator continued. "You gave her hope." Lyra looked at Sam with a huge smile. She pointed at her legs and then at him. "Sam," she said proudly. Sam's throat tightened. The Queen extended her hand toward him. "She wishes to reward you," the guard translated. "Anything you ask for can be yours." Sam shook his head slowly. "I don't need anything, just make sure she's safe." The Queen smiled softly and nodded. She spoke a few words and the guards brought forward a small box. Inside were rare tools, advanced materials, and shining energy cores, things Sam could never afford in his lifetime. "She gives you this," the translator said. A gift from the royal family. Sam accepted it quietly. But more than the gift, what touched him was the look Lyra gave him. It wasn't a goodbye filled with sadness. It was full of trust and love. That night, as the royal ships prepared to leave, Lyra ran back to Sam one last time. She wrapped her small arms around him tightly. "Sam," she whispered again. He gently hugged her back. "Walk strong, Lyra." Then she returned to her mother, climbing into the royal ship on her new legs. As the ship rose into the starry sky, Sam stood outside his workshop watching the blue light fade into the night. His heart felt both heavy and full. He had been just a poor mechanic, but for a moment in time he had been someone's hero. The night after Lyra and the Queen left, the workshop felt strangely quiet. The tools were still on the workbench. The cot was neatly folded and the small blanket Lyra had used was still lying there, carrying a faint memory of her presence. Sam sat alone in his wooden chair, sipping his warm tea, looking at the stars above the dusty outpost. For the first time in weeks, the shop was silent. No soft alien laughter, no gentle tapping of tools being passed back and forth. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. He could still see the way Lyra smiled when she took her first steps. He could still hear her soft voice saying his name before she left. Sam didn't expect any of this to happen. He was just a poor mechanic fixing old machines. He never imagined he would end up changing the life of a royal child. The next morning, the outpost slowly came alive again. People passed by his workshop, whispering about the royal ship that had landed the day before. Some looked at Sam with new respect, some with curiosity. They had heard the story. A simple mechanic had helped the missing princess. But Sam didn't act like a hero. He opened his workshop at the usual time, turned on the lights, and got back to fixing an old farming engine. His hands moved with their usual quiet strength. That was the kind of man he was, steady, humble, and kind. Later in the day, the local patrol captain came to see him. The same sirens that scared Sam just a few nights ago now brought someone with good news. "Sam," the captain said with a smile, "I've never seen anything like this. The royal fleet came here, for you. People in the central stations are already talking about what you did." Sam wiped the oil off his hands. "I didn't do anything special," he said softly. "She was just a child who needed help." The captain shook his head. "No, Sam, that's what makes it special. You didn't know who she was, but you helped her anyway. That's real kindness." Sam just smiled quietly. He didn't need praise. Helping Lyra had already changed something inside him, a quiet strength he never knew he had. In the weeks that followed, life at the outpost slowly returned to normal. But Sam's workshop did not stay the same. One morning, a royal messenger arrived at his door. The messenger wore elegant clothing and carried a sealed letter with a golden emblem. Sam carefully opened it. Inside was a message from Queen Sarai herself. "To the one who gave hope to my daughter when she was lost. Your kindness reached not only her heart but mine as well. We will never forget what you did. A gift has been sent not for reward, but as a sign of trust between your people and ours." Attached to the letter was a royal insignia, an official mark that allowed Sam's workshop to receive the best tools and technology directly from the royal fleet. No one in the entire outpost had anything like it. Within a week, a delivery ship arrived with boxes full of advanced tools, bright new energy cores, shiny metal parts, and upgraded machines. Sam could hardly believe his eyes. His tiny old workshop suddenly had equipment more advanced than most stations in the region. But what made Sam smile most wasn't the technology. It was a small box tucked at the bottom of the shipment. Inside was a hand-carved wooden toy, wrench with Lyra's name and a small word in her, language that the translator later explained meant friend. Sam held the little toy for a long time. Business at the workshop grew quickly after that. Pilots, farmers, and travelers from nearby towns came to him for repairs because they knew he had good tools and a good heart. But Sam didn't charge more than before. He kept his prices fair, and when poor families came with broken machines, he still fixed them for free, just like he always had. Every evening after work, he would step outside and look at the stars. Some nights he wondered where Lyra was. He imagined her running through royal gardens, laughing with her mother, walking confidently on the legs he had built. And he felt proud, not because of money or rewards, but because he had been part of something meaningful. One afternoon, months later, the sky over the outpost filled with a familiar sound. It wasn't a trade shuttle or patrol ship. The sound was soft but powerful, the same as the day the royal ship had first arrived. Sam stepped out of his workshop and looked up. A small royal transport ship was slowly descending. Dust blew in the air as it landed just outside his gate. The door opened and 2 guards stepped out. Between them walked a little girl in a white dress, her silver eyes bright and her steps strong and confident. "Lyra," Sam whispered, his eyes widening in surprise. She ran toward him, her feet light and sure. Her legs, once broken and weak, now moved smoothly. When she reached him, she threw her arms around him, laughing with joy. "Sam," she said, her voice clear and excited. Sam knelt down, smiling warmly. "You came back?" Behind her, Queen Sarai stepped out of the ship, dressed not as a ruler this time, but in simple traveling clothes. She walked up to Sam with a soft smile and nodded. The translator spoke for her. "The Queen says her daughter has asked to visit the man who helped her walk again. She wished to thank you herself." Lyra gently pulled something from behind her back, a small flower carved from silver metal. She held it out to him with both hands. "For Sam," she said carefully. Sam took the flower gently. "Thank you," he said softly. For the rest of the afternoon, Lyra stayed at the workshop. She ran around the yard, touched the old tools she remembered, and even helped Sam tighten a few bolts, laughing when she dropped the wrench on the floor. Sam watched her quietly, his heart full. She wasn't just a memory anymore. She was real, standing in front of him, strong and happy. The Queen stood at the door, watching her daughter and Sam. She spoke softly through the translator. "She remembers everything. She tells everyone at the palace about the kind human who gave her legs and hope." Sam lowered his head slightly, feeling both shy and proud. "I'm just glad she's happy." Before leaving, Lyra turned to Sam again. She pointed at the stars and said, "I'll come again." Sam laughed softly. "I'll be here." When the royal ship took off and disappeared into the sky, Sam stood outside for a long time, holding the silver flower in his hands. The stars shone brightly above him, just like they did the night he first found her. But now those stars didn't feel far or unreachable anymore, because somewhere out there, a little girl with silver eyes remembered him, not as a mechanic, not as a poor man, but as a friend. From that day on, Sam's workshop became more than a repair shop. It became a place where people came not only to fix their machines, but also to hear the story of the poor mechanic and the little alien girl who became friends. And every night, when Sam sat in his chair under the stars, he smiled quietly, knowing that kindness can travel far, farther than any ship. Faster than any light, it can change lives. It can build bridges between worlds.